The morning mist clung to Alara's worn shawl as she hurried through the grand gates of Oakhaven Manor. Each step was a reminder of the stark contrast between her life and the opulence surrounding her. Alara, with her youthful face framed by raven braids and eyes the color of a twilight sky, was a servant within these walls. Her days were filled with the endless tasks of dusting, scrubbing, and polishing, all to earn the meager coins that kept her disabled parents fed and sheltered. Despite the drudgery, Alara held onto a natural sweetness. Her smile was quick, her laughter light, and her forgiveness as boundless as the sky. Even the harsh treatment from the mistress of the house, Mrs. Cavendish, and her two haughty daughters, couldn't extinguish the warmth in her spirit. They sneered at her patched clothes, mocked her calloused hands, and burdened her with the most unpleasant chores. One crisp autumn afternoon, Mrs. Cavendish demanded a basket of wild berries, a rare delicacy found only deep within the Whispering Woods. "And be quick about it, girl," she snapped, her voice sharp as broken glass. "We have guests arriving for dinner." Alara, with a basket slung over her arm, ventured into the woods. The path, dappled with sunlight filtering through the golden canopy, was initially clear. But as she delved deeper, lured by the promise of plump berries, the trail grew faint, then vanished altogether. Panic, cold and swift, seized her. Lost and with shadows lengthening, Alara sank to her knees, tears blurring her vision. "Why are you crying, fair maiden?" A voice, rich and warm as velvet, startled her. Alara looked up, her breath catching in her throat. Before her stood a vision. A young man with hair like spun gold and eyes the blue of a summer sky. He was garbed in green and brown, the colors of the forest itself, and an air of gentle strength surrounded him. He introduced himself as Prince Lysander, explaining that he was hunting in the woods when he heard her sobs. As Alara recounted her tale, Lysander listened with growing admiration. He saw not just her beauty, but the kindness that shone through her tears, the unwavering devotion to her parents despite her own hardships. He was captivated. Lysander, who possessed a touch of magic, helped Alara find the berries and then, with a flick of his wrist, conjured a path leading back to the edge of the woods. As they walked, they talked, their conversation as effortless as the rustling leaves beneath their feet. Alara found herself opening up to him, sharing her dreams and fears, her hopes and sorrows. At the edge of the woods, Lysander took her hand, his touch sending a shiver down her spine. "Alara," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "I know this is sudden, but I cannot deny what my heart feels. Will you be my wife?" Alara was taken aback. Marry a prince? It seemed like a fairy tale. But looking into Lysander's sincere eyes, she realized it wasn't the title that mattered, but the man who wore it. A man who saw her, valued her, and loved her for who she was. With tears shimmering in her eyes, she nodded. Their wedding was a joyous affair. Alara, adorned in a gown of ivory silk, looked radiant. Lysander, his eyes filled with love, couldn't take his gaze off her. The news of the woodcutter's daughter marrying a prince spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, at Oakhaven Manor, Mrs. Cavendish and her daughters were furious. Their servant girl, the one they treated with such disdain, was now a princess. The thought was unbearable. One day, driven by a mix of curiosity and resentment, they decided to visit the prince's castle. As they stood before the majestic gates, their jaws dropped. The castle was grander than anything they could have imagined. They were ushered into a magnificent hall where Alara, now Princess Alara, sat beside Lysander. The former servant girl exuded grace and dignity, her kindness still evident, but now coupled with a newfound confidence. Recognizing them, Alara rose. Instead of anger or retribution, she greeted them with a gentle smile. "Mrs. Cavendish, Miss Cavendish, Miss Amelia, welcome to our home. Please, join us for some refreshments." The Cavendish women were speechless. The girl they had mistreated was now a princess, yet she harbored no ill will. Shame washed over them, their arrogance melting away. Lysander, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, offered them positions in the castle. Not as servants, but as ladies-in-waiting to his beloved wife. He knew Alara's kind heart wouldn't allow them to be turned away. And so, the Cavendish women, once proud and cruel, found themselves serving the girl they had once scorned. They learned humility, kindness, and the true meaning of respect. Alara, in her forgiveness, not only transformed their lives but also showed them the path to redemption. As for Alara and Lysander, their love story became a legend whispered throughout the kingdom. It was a tale of kindness triumphing over cruelty, of love blossoming in the most unexpected places, and of a simple girl whose inner beauty captured the heart of a prince.